All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Another live stream with a huge story. One of the questions that all of us asked of Pam Bondi as she came into the role of Attorney General of the United States was whether she would pursue the bad actors from the 2020 election, the many bad actors. Justice still has not been served over one of the greatest crimes, scandals of the century. It's the reason YouTube took me off in the first place. In 2021, early 2021, I started making content about 2020 because I felt the larger conservative voices weren't making videos about it. People like Ben Shapiro, Brandon Tatum, Steven Crowder. Actually, Crowder stuck with the truth for a while. He actually kept speaking about it. But it just felt like conservatives just moved on from what we saw. We saw what we saw, and it wasn't legal. There was no way 81 million votes came out of nowhere for the guy who campaigned in his basement. And the 4 years we spent under the Biden regime was our punishment for not stopping what happened. Whatever we tried, it didn't work. Going to courts, asking for remedy, none of it worked. It was annoying. It was a terrible period of time, and we all got censored. So we couldn't even talk about it on the biggest platform in the world. YouTube has 2 billion users. We were banished to the echo chamber of Rumble. We couldn't compete on ideas, on presenting evidence to the public, none of that. But Pam Bondi is working on an investigation that I think is absolutely massive, being reported on by The Guardian. This is not a joke. Tulsi Gabbard earlier in the year announced that the Department of National Intelligence, or her office as the Director of National Intelligence, was looking into foreign interference. Kash Patel, the FBI director, released some documents corroborating us, the conspiracy theorist. And the question has just been on Pam Bondi, like, what is she doing right now? Is she pursuing the avenues that must be pursued? Is she interviewing people? Is the Justice Department taking this thing seriously? And it seems like they are, actually. It seems like they are. When we get into this story, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. It connects with another story. The United States has been building a very unprecedented military presence in the Caribbean. I don't think we've ever had such a military presence since like the Vietnam War or something. I don't know, some like war in the past. We are basically at any moment now going to conduct covert operations in Venezuela. We've already been blowing up narco terrorists off the face of the earth. And with the designation of the Cartel of the Suns, led by Nicolas Maduro, the United States will be empowered to conduct strikes in the interior of Venezuela, and those strikes will achieve the outcome of changing the regime. The Venezuelan airspace is completely closed. U.S. planes are encircling the island, the country. A lot is going on there, and these stories connect. So let me get into this here. This is coming in from The Guardian. It's an exclusive story. Trump's DOJ, well, keep in mind, The Guardian will write this like how leftists write. So they are going to say conspiracy theorist and whatnot. But I'm going to read it how they wrote it, and then we'll dissect it. Trump's DOJ investigating unfounded claims Venezuela helped steal the 2020 election. Yep. That's insane, right? Discredited election rigging conspiracy theory could strengthen Trump's military action against Maduro. Federal investigators have been interviewing multiple people who are pushing unfounded claims that Venezuela, blah, blah, blah. Two promoters of the conspiracy theory have repeatedly briefed the U.S. Attorney for the District of Puerto Rico, Stephen Muldrow, and have shared witnesses and documents with officials, according to 4 sources. In addition to the Puerto Rico talks, people pushing the conspiracy theory have been, oh gosh, people pushing the conspiracy have been interviewed by federal investigators for a federal task force in Tampa, which is looking at Venezuelan drug trafficking and money laundering, 4 sources told The Guardian. An investigation of this sort underscores how Trump's Justice Department is becoming a major weapon in the president's efforts to rewrite the history of his 2020 loss, while potentially strengthening the administration's case for military action against Venezuela. While there were a variety of conspiracy theories that helped fuel Donald Trump's 2020 Stop the Steal movement, that voters stolen fraudulent or forged ballots and secret computer servers in Germany, the purported influence of Venezuela was always a central claim. It asserted that electronic voting in the U.S. was secretly controlled by the impoverished regime, both by President Nicolas Maduro and his deceased predecessor, Hugo Chavez. Not only was it bizarre on its face, but a judge in Delaware ruled it false in 2023, and Fox News, Newsmax, and OAN later paid a total of $100 million, a total of hundreds of millions of dollars in total damages and defamation claims. At heart, the theory was that Smartmatic, which had the contract for electronic voting machines in Los Angeles, and Dominion, which ran voting in many other parts of the country, had been created or influenced by Venezuela to fix elections. The revival of the claim appears to bind together 2 themes: Trump's consistent rigged election complaints and his antagonism to Venezuela's socialist regime. With a military buildup in the Caribbean and increased Sabra rattling from the Trump administration towards Maduro, the unfounded election rigging theories could provide another rationale for military action against Maduro. How could a discredited conspiracy theory be investigated as a plausible case by the U.S. Justice Department 5 years after it first bubbled up? The theory starts with 2 unique characters who claim to have been pursuing the election claims for years: Gary Bernstein, or Bernson, and Martin Rodell. Okay, who is Gary Bernson? Well, Gary Bernson is a former CIA officer. So this guy's literally an espionage. He's a spy for the United States. He's not a joke. 68 years old, and according to those reports, he's been pursuing these claims for years. So we have a CIA officer and Martin Rodell, founder and CEO of Inter-American Solutions and the president of the Venezuelan American Leadership Council. He's an expert on Latin American politics, money laundering investigations, and the financial analysis of terrorism. This guy actually was wanted by multiple jurisdictions because he extorted millions of dollars out of Venezuelan criminals. He's a serious operator. Yeah, they're interesting characters for sure. And so they've been pushing this claim. They've been providing the DOJ with all these documents, all this information. They have become sources for the Trump camp and ultimately for investigators, and have promoted 2 major allegations about Venezuela. The first theme links Tren de Aragua, the street gang Trump has designated as a terrorist organization close to Maduro. The other major theme Bertson and Rodau promoted was the old voting conspiracy and the allegations that Venezuela helped rigged elections worldwide. Bertson is a former CIA case officer who came to the public eye even before writing a book in 2006 about his hunt for Osama bin Laden. A formidable guy, a warrior, no question, said one former official who knew him. Bertson projects the plain-spoken demeanor of an expert with field experience battling whatever. He's also a fierce champion of Trump and of an invasion of Venezuela. I don't dabble in conspiracy theories, Bernson wrote in a message to The Guardian. I spent my life defending our country and Constitution. I led many major operations and investigations and saved many lives. He added, the Department of Justice and FBI and key White House staff are investigating and coordinating efforts to defend our system and charge those guilty of stealing elections and violating other laws accountable for their actions. Rodell is a Venezuelan expatriate based in Washington and says he has been a consultant to U.S. law enforcement investigating Venezuelan crime for 20 years. A close associate of his said he specializes in recruiting Venezuelan informants and witnesses for U.S. cases. Come on. Oh my gosh. You have two really interesting characters, a CIA officer and a guy with outrageous connections in Venezuela who gets informants for the United States and witnesses for us, saying Venezuela is involved with 2020. That's interesting, right? The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists reported in 2022 that Rodo was under investigation in Spain for extorting three Venezuelans there, Venezuelan criminals, by the way, trying to get money in exchange for influencing U.S. authorities on cases. It's unclear what happened to that case. Rodell told The Guardian it was false and said those who accused him were charged in the U.S. Exactly. Even before Trump's return to office earlier this year, the sources say Bernson and Rodell have been feeding information, documents, and witnesses about the voting claims to Muldrow, the U.S. attorney out of Puerto Rico, and to an organized crime task force called Panama Express, or PANEX, which is based out of Tampa. Sources familiar with the relationship between Muldrow, Bernson, and Rodell. I'm not going to say this name right ever. I hate names like this, man. It's like a tongue twister. Rudel. Okay. Say there has been an extensive cooperation on the matter. They work together. Muldrow has been very receptive, one of the sources said of the voting allegations. That source said there had been multiple briefings in Puerto Rico. Muldrow is one of the few U.S. attorneys to have kept the job after Trump took over the White House. First appointed by Trump in 2019, he stayed in office during Biden's term. He's a staunch Republican and a Trump supporter, say two people who know him. Muldrow spent a good portion of his career in Tampa. And one source who knows him says he has a good working relationship with Pam Bondi, the current U.S. Attorney General. She was the Florida State AG, while Muldrow was based in the Tampa U.S. Attorney's Office. Several sources said Muldrow had turned over information to the PANEX task force, which used to focus primarily on the drug flow from Colombia, but was now targeting Venezuela as well. This is now the task force working directly with Rodell and Bernson, they say. In response to detailed questions, Muldrow emailed The Guardian, in accordance with the Department of Justice policies, I am not able to provide you with a comment. Okay. Rodell told The Guardian that allegations involving so-called election integrity issues were incidental to conversations with Muldrow, rather than the central point of the briefings. He pointed that while one witness talked about Smartmatic and election integrity, that was not the substance of Muldrow's interest, and he said Muldrow only heard a portion of the evidence involving fake election results. Bernson wrote in a message to The Guardian that indictments are going to be released in the near future, and said he and his colleagues believe that your goal is to discredit the claims against Smartmatic and Dominion, the entities linked to a massive criminal cartel that stole U.S. elections and elections worldwide. So, indictments are going to be released in the near future. Interesting. Trump knows they need to be stopped. Okay? That's what The Guardian says. Ralph Pezzulo, the author of Bernson's 2006 book, is a true believer in the conspiracy theories Bernson and Rodell are promoting now. In September, Pezzulo published an e-book called Stolen Elections, The Takedown of Democracies Worldwide, which described the Venezuelan conspiracy theories and is based on the accounts of Bernson and Morel. Oh, did they incorrectly spell his name? It's Rodell. And witnesses they introduced to Pezzulo. I think we're going to stop it there. Yeah, I mean, it was already basically over anyways. Yeah. Yep. claimed Muldrow assured him that the claims of election fraud were correct. They've been attacking the U.S. with the election machines and with the drugs. Puzillo said of Venezuela, Trump knows they need to be stopped. Okay, there we go. That's the end of that article. That's a huge one. That's huge. So, Venezuela, Maduro, 2020 election. Everything just connects, huh? Just connects. I mean, it would have made sense if Venezuela was heavily involved. I mean, Trump put the same kind of maximum pressure he's putting on them now back then. This pressure on Venezuela isn't necessarily new. And it's a bipartisan pressure. I mean, Democrat presidents have kept pressure on the Maduro regime and the Hugo Chavez regime before that. So Venezuela has been all over the United States with their operations. So yeah, I think this story is going to unfold in the next few weeks and months. As you read there, we could be seeing indictments come up. And here's what's going on with Venezuela. So their claim is that this conspiracy of Venezuela targeting U.S. elections is what's strengthening Trump's military action against Maduro. Well, Representative Carlos Jimenez of Miami, Florida, just posted, "No more flights to Venezuela. Thank you for your attention to this matter." In Spanish, all flights to Venezuela canceled. Thank you for your attention. Not much left. Meaning not much time left. All operations that lead to the annihilation of the Cartel de las Soles, narco-terrorist enterprise in Venezuela, will be welcomed by the American people, and the Venezuelan people will be eternally grateful. In Miami, there will be celebrations like no other. It's the right thing to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. That's the story right there. That does put a smile on my face, okay? It's good to see that the DOJ is looking at this stuff. I know Pam Bondi has been criticized by the political establishment for listening to the president on everything. But I'm a believer in the unitary executive. I think the president holds the power in the executive branch. There are no independent executive branch agencies or departments. Duh, that's how the founders wanted it to be. The Attorney General answers to the President. The Attorney General is not some office. No, they answer to the President. The Attorney General isn't there to check the power of the President, of the presidency. That's Congress's job. That's the judicial's job. So we have a separation of powers between three branches. We don't have a separation within the executive. The president is the nation's top law enforcement officer, and he should have the ability to have direct oversight and control of the DOJ. His secretaries and his directors and his ambassadors, or whoever else works in the executive, answers to the president and to Congress when they are called upon in hearings. Literally, right? So this idea that Pam Bondi is just doing whatever Trump says is true, and it's right. It's the right thing to do. If Trump says investigate that person, he's doing his job as a law enforcement officer. Indeed, when the police department witnesses a crime, they instruct the DA and send that report over to the district attorney, and the expectation is the DA will investigate and bring charges. That's how it works. When the mayor sees similar crimes, yeah, again, you have to investigate if you're the DA. So Trump is just doing his job as president by instructing the DOJ to investigate these various things. So they're doing their job. I want to see some indictments, and I want to see some vindication. You know, Dominion, the famous Dominion, changed their name. They got bought out by a former Republican election official, I believe, from Missouri. He spent a lot of money and bought them out. And they changed the name to Liberty Vote. Yeah. It's certainly a more tame version of Dominion. Like, you're dominating us, you're having dominion over us. So it's a better name, Liberty Vote, but, you know, Still the same software, proprietary, still the same machines, same manufacturer. I hope it does change the fortunes of this country, though. And here's the thing with 2020 justice, it really affects everything else. If we can't get justice for something that was so obvious to everybody, something they fought so hard against to prevent the truth from coming out, then they're just going to do it again in a more obvious manner because there was nothing that could have been more obvious than 2020. If we don't get justice for that, then nothing else really matters. We can't trust any other thing. We'll have to flood the polls to have a chance. But if you legitimately tackle this issue, make arrest, bring justice, that hammer of justice, accountability, it acts as a deterrent. No one's going to want to pull off shenanigans in the future if the consequences are so dire. So, yeah, I'm in a way happy and proud of Pam Bondi because I didn't expect this from her. I thought she was a very generic attorney general pick. Well, she is. Like, she is a very generic Republican attorney general. But she's not Bill Barr, right? Bill Barr was just like a scumbag. So, yeah. We'll see what happens. This is a very important investigation. Maduro is going to go down. His regime will end. And that's another reason to support the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign. And that pressure will eventually turn into covert operations. I mean, he already authorized CIA moves. And the CIA usually does their things before the military does anything. And once the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, makes that designation of the Cartel of the Suns as a terrorist organization, then it gives the president power to authorize strikes, military strikes. The CIA will probably sabotage critical infrastructure that the regime uses to do what they do, weaken the regime from the inside, and try to turn people in Maduro's circle against him. And that will certainly work. And then the military will have free rein to do whatever they want. Or it might not come to that. Maduro and President Trump are expected to speak very soon. And I can imagine the call will go something like this. Nicholas, you can step down, come out of power now, and we'll let you go free. Okay? We'll let you go free. And you know, speaking of free, I worked at McDonald's. They never paid me. I worked for free like Morgan Freeman. It was free. But you'll go free. You'll walk free. You could go to Cuba. You could go Russia. You know, Democrats for years said I was involved with Russia. No, they were involved with Russia. But no, yes. So we'll see what happens in regards to that. There's going to be a huge celebration in the country when this whole Venezuela chapter ends. Because Venezuela is holding Latin America back. It's holding our neighbors back. It should be a very dominating economic power with the oil reserves they have, but they're not because of socialism. Socialism has destroyed Venezuela. And who's to say that Russia and China don't use Venezuela as a proxy state to attack U.S. elections? Who's to say that? No one can convince me otherwise. Because that article made it very clear. You have these two experts, a CIA officer, feeding information to the Justice Department, as well as a Venezuelan in the United States who has informants and witnesses from Venezuela that allow us to prosecute. These are very credible individuals telling the president Venezuela is targeting our elections, and they did it in 2020. And I'm sure 2018 and years prior. Who's to say our enemies, our economic enemies, are superpower adversaries like Russia, like China, and I'm sure others, were not putting Venezuela up to it? Because a socialist regime like Venezuela with no money, no military power, can't really do anything. Venezuela can't command cyber warfare. But what if China and Russia were giving them those things to put the United States in a bad spot by influencing our elections? Between us and Russia and China, we're the only ones that do elections the right way, where we want the person that wins to actually get in office. In China, there are no elections. In Russia, they have elections, but we know who the winner is. So, and Venezuela and Russia are, and China too, are very close. And Venezuela is aligned with the bloc of countries that are opposing U.S. dominance, opposing the dollar's dominance as the world's reserve currency, which sometimes we don't really need, because it'd be better if we could devalue the dollar and make things cheaper and sell them higher like China does. But we don't get that privilege because we're the world's reserve currency. We have to stay strong all the time. I wish we could be like the Swiss franc, but we're not. Anyways, those countries could have very well put Venezuela up to it, and this is just how superpowers interact. We'll never directly want to do anything to antagonize China if we're economically dependent on them. I mean, all of our critical minerals essentially come from there, and our supply chains are slowly changing due to President Trump's tariffs for the better, of course, and we're creating new alliances, which is great. But we sabotage them all the time using other countries. Recently Japan said China's aggression toward Taiwan endangers Japan. That's what the new Japanese prime minister said. And she met Trump like a week or two prior. And then she made that statement, and now China and Japan are in this like intense little battle. Well, what if we told Japan to say that because we don't want to say it ourselves, right? Puts us in a bad position with China. We told Japan to say it, and as a means to deter China from doing what they want to do to Taiwan. So this is how superpowers interact with each other. They are constantly trying to sabotage each other, trying to get the upper hand, play dirty. China plays very dirty. For them to get their minerals, it's not because China's land is blessed by God with all kinds of natural deposits of everything. It's because they're impoverishing African countries and Latin American countries in massive debt and then taking over their mining operations. I believe China controls, 80% of the Democratic Republic of Congo's mining activity? And Congo is a war-torn country, so it would only be China that benefits from wars. And that's why President Trump is trying to establish those different relationships, partnering with Australia in the area of critical minerals, going after Alaska reserves, trying to open it up. And I think in South Carolina, might have been North Carolina, the first magnet was made in the United States in 25 years, according to Scott Bessent. He actually held it up on Fox News. So we are in this battle with China. They play dirty. So who's to say they aren't putting Venezuela up to it to fight our elections? Who's to say that? It's kind of weird that The Guardian insist that these two men feeding the information to the U.S. attorney and the DOJ, they're like, these like crazed lunatics. And then they list out their credentials, and they're very credentialed individuals. Like, yeah, if they're sharing witnesses and documents, that's not easy. There must be something here. So, yeah, I love the fact that the DOJ is going after this exact issue because it's absolutely critical. It's critical. And I think if we don't do what we need to do in Venezuela, do the regime change we need there, 2028 will come and they will try again. They will try again. Do people forget that there was an election in Venezuela and he stayed after losing? It's like people forget that. Yeah, Maduro didn't win that election in July last year. And the opposition did something smart. They had local election officials give copies or original tally sheets from 80% of the country's precincts or voting areas, stations. I don't know what they call it. We call it precincts, they might call it something else. So they had all this data accumulated and figured, based off the data, that the opposition got like 65% of the vote. Maduro got like 28%, like something ridiculous. But Maduro, because he's a socialist dictator, just declared himself the winner. So that's kind of how that election went. It was not fair at all to the people of Venezuela. And I saw people in the streets kneeling down praying to God that their country would be saved. And it seems like we have a mix and a match of circumstances. The United States needs Venezuela to have a favorable regime. The Venezuelan people voted for a favorable regime to the United States. And now there's going to be an operation to install that favorable regime that the people already picked. The Venezuelan people are going to celebrate when Maria Corina Machado takes office. They're going to be proud of being Venezuelan, and they're going to be happy and appreciative towards the United States. Bosnia in Europe would not exist without the United States. And so if you go to Bosnia, no, sorry, I keep saying Bosnia, Kosovo, it's Kosovo. I mistake the two. Eastern Europe just has too many countries that look the same in my mind for some odd reason. Well, I guess because Bosnia is fighting their neighbors, just like Kosovo would have been at some point. But people in Kosovo talk about America like we're like their best friend, you know? They were their greatest ally. We don't know who they are, but it's because the United States helped establish them, helped make them a country. So not every U.S. intervention will lead to a backfire. It's not going to be nation building in Venezuela. They're already a pretty decently structured country without socialism. And the moment they go back to free market capitalism, free trade, and align with the U.S., there's going to be a lot of business done. And they're going to build up their infrastructure. They're going to build up their industries. People are going to be employed. American companies will move there and make money and bring it back here. And we're all going to benefit. It's just got to get to that point. You know, we have to get to that point. We intervened in Japan after World War II, after nuking them. They forgave us, and now we're close allies. We're best friends. The United Kingdom was our enemy in 1776, and 150 years later, we were fighting alongside them in their wars against their neighbors. So again, it's not every regime interference is nation building. Not everything is going to be the worst thing in the world. Pray just don't be the ones that mass kneel on the street blocking traffic. Yeah, Christians don't have that attitude. That's a very Islamic disposition that, you know, they can just interfere with the public and block traffic. Do you think Ukraine will agree to 47's deal? Oh, Ukraine. It's sad what's going on there. The reason Putin feels empowered to continue the war is because he's winning, right? He's been taking territories, city after city, for the last 3 years. You know, a lot of people say, well, is he really winning? Ukraine's kind of putting up a resistance, and Russia's losing a lot of troops too. But we have to remember, the moment Russia initiated that invasion, it triggered a global sanction war, like a sanction spree on Russia. Russia got sanctioned to the frickin' ground. They weren't allowed into the financial system. Russia can't participate in the World Cup because of this. Their global image declined drastically. They were touted to enter a recession. And then in no time, the ruble recovered because domestic industry started booming again because it was a war economy at that point. So they started making a lot of weapons, a lot of drones. They partnered with Iran to make Iran's drones and to bring that technology, these $50,000, $100,000 drones that are cheap to make, easy to make, fast to make, and then you can deploy them quick. And they made a lot of drones, and then, funny enough, they stole Iran's technology. The Shahed drones, they just stole the technology and started making it themselves, and Iran gets no profit. So, yeah. So that was funny. That was always funny to me. But Putin feels like he can't lose. He's fighting NATO, the European Union at the same time. He's fighting the world superpower. He's effectively at war with the United States and winning. So to him, he's like, I don't have a reason to stop this. I don't have a reason to withdraw from anything because it's only a matter of time until the United States gets annoyed enough with Ukraine and tired of it to the point where we just stop funding it altogether. And that's kind of where we're going. I feel bad for Trump because he didn't start this war. Well, he did give Ukraine the Patriot missile defense systems in his first term, but Russia didn't invade because Russia was terrified of Ukraine. But during that war in the Donbass, Trump gave Ukraine some pretty powerful weapons, and Russia might have seen that as okay, cool. When Trump's out of office, we're attacking. So, who's to say if we didn't give Ukraine those weapons back then, maybe Russia and Ukraine would have worked something out diplomatically. And they probably were going to work it out. Zelensky would have probably given up a lot of territory, but Boris Johnson was sent over by Joe Biden and the EU and NATO to convince Zelensky to keep the war going because the US and NATO and the EU would fund it. And they did. We've been funding that war, paying a lot of money. And so the New Deal essentially gives Russia huge chunks of territory, which, to be fair, they already control at this point. But it gives them huge territory in some disputed areas. And then it says the United States will give Ukraine almost a NATO-esque guarantee, like a security guarantee. Like if Russia gets all this land and they proceed to attack Ukraine again, then the U.S. will step in. And we're using that as a deterrent. And plus, by entangling ourselves economically with Ukraine, we benefit with their critical minerals. Ukraine is a very resource-rich area, hence why Russia is so invested in it. Plus, I think Russia's only warm water seaport is in the Black Sea. So they can't afford to have NATO control Ukraine. It's our fault. It's honestly our fault. The CIA overthrew the pro-Russian Ukrainian president. And that, ever since then, in 2014, things have just been going downhill. And it just does, it's sad to see what's happening. Will Russia accept it? Who knows? Vladimir Putin might just think, oh, I'll take the whole thing now. And I don't know. But I want him to accept it because the global economy suffered since that war started. Oil prices suffered because Russia's a huge producer and they were blocked out of the market. And what they do now, I guess, is sell crude to India, and then India takes the crude and sells it out to the rest of the world. So Russia's kind of found a way, and China, of course, buys a lot of Russian oil. But Russia's suffering too. I mean, you can't keep a war economy going for so long, right? It's only a matter of time until everything just bursts. So, yeah. See what happens. We want peace. We want peace in the Middle East. No, peace in Ukraine. Peace in the Slavic? No, where is Ukraine? The Balkans, or it's somewhere. It's somewhere. Did you guys see? There was so X, the platform owned by Elon Musk, released a new feature which I thought was really interesting, revealing everyone's location, essentially. And a lot of liberal accounts, a lot of liberal accounts are actually foreign. Like this account that used to just be like Kamala Harris's biggest surrogate on X, constantly posting about why he was voting for Kamala Harris, turned out to be a Canadian. That's where we're at. That's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. So I thought that was a huge feature. Elon did well there. And then they outed me. I was like, Elon, we're doing so well. And then Elon outed me for being Ukrainian. I am Indian. I'm Indian. As soon as a peace deal is signed, Zelensky's life is over. I mean, literally. I mean, the guy will have 100 days, I believe, in that agreement to do an election. Yeah, it's basically just the Trump administration saying we're tired of this guy and we're ready to just give him into Russia because it's getting tiring. But all right, we've been live for a little bit. Stop the movie to watch. Great news, says Catherine. I appreciate you stopping your movie to watch me blabber on about election integrity. I think it's an important story, so yeah. Ukraine is south of Moscow and a little west. The thing with Ukraine is it's too close to Russia for Russia to lose it to NATO or even the EU for that matter. And you got to think about it. If Russia started moving, assets to Canada, we'd probably blow up Canada. So, you could see it from their perspective why they feel like they have to do some of those things. But yeah, that thing is dragged on for way too long, and Putin is just. How many people has this war taken? Millions? And not just like taken in terms of lives gone. You have a lot of people who just don't have homes. They've been internally and externally displaced. Poland has a lot of Ukrainians there now. And it's like, it's a refugee crisis. So I don't know what Putin's aim is, man. It's just not working for anybody. In Venezuela, because of 50 million reward, Maduro, he's panicking and doesn't trust anyone around him. That's a good comment. Yeah, Maduro is singing. He made another appearance on... Hold on, guys. You're not going to believe this. This guy... he did it again. He's singing about peace.
War no!
War no! Oh, man. Oh, I gotta watch that again.
War no! Never, never war! Listen to me, the people in the United States. Iba a hablar portugués, iba a decir, você!
So, what's funny about Maduro is, I think he's hilarious. He's a hilarious dictator. He's the funniest dictator I've ever seen. But the problem with him is he's destroying his country, he's destroying his people because of socialism. If Maduro was a capitalist and believed in fair and free elections, he probably would win because of his charisma. I understand why Hugo Chavez picked him as a successor, because the guy is funny. Like, he's, war no, never, never. It's like, okay, all right, well. But I don't know, Trump is a scary guy, right? Because when Trump puts out a threat, he's able to do it. That's why it's a different thing. Like when he says, I'm going to tariff you 100%, he'll do it. He'll do it without asking any questions. So when you're Nicolas Maduro, you read a threat from Trump, you know he's serious. So you can't just act anyway. And yeah, that's why Maduro is terrified right now. And every story seems to suggest that he's willing to just give everything up if he stays out of jail after leaving office. So he thinks it's a movie. Actually, yeah, he thinks it's a joke, but it's pretty obvious his days are numbered, and it's only a matter of time. I'm not hyping this up because it's not going to happen. It is actually going to happen. It's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I'm gonna go watch a movie. Actually, I haven't watched a movie in a long time. I'm trying to get into mafia movies because I'm feeling like a mafia boss recently. Feeling like doing criminal activity. No, not that part. But yeah, let's pray and then get out of here. Lord, I pray for justice to be served in every avenue. God, don't allow evildoers and these bad actors to get away with anything that they have done. Empower our leaders, our law enforcement officials like Pam Bondi, Cash Patel, Dan Bongino, and everybody else to have the wisdom to deal with these issues and bring justice for past grievances and crimes. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Maduro is taking a big time Biden. I don't know what that means. That was not funny. It was not funny. Watch The Irishman. The problem is, I watched a movie recently with Robert De Niro, and it annoyed me because he's such a good actor, but he's a liberal. But I can separate his politics from his talent. I can do that at least. But the movie's too long, man. The Irishman thing is like 4 hours. I don't have the attention span for that. They gotta clip it for me. Grok needs to summarize it. Interstellar. I watched Interstellar recently for the first time. I didn't like it. Not that I didn't like. No, I didn't. I don't like movies like that. It's like this weird. The science was not. It was fake. It was like, I don't know. I don't like movies like that. They're just too much. It's too much for me. Alberta, Canada. Hey, when are you guys gonna join the U.S.? I thought your premiere was all over that. When's Alberta gonna be part of the? Yeah, they're. Yeah, I thought Danielle Smith was wanting to join the United States. Did she just give that up? I'll take Alberta. I mean, we'll take Alberta. They could be like northern Montana, but we gotta have Saskatchewan too, or oh my gosh, Saskatchewan, whatever that name is. Those two little provinces, we gotta have them because Alberta is like, we need a box around. We gotta have that giant box. They could be like North Dakota. That could be their new name. Watch Barbie. You guys are trolling me. Why would I watch Barbie? Manitoba. Oh, where's everyone watching from? Since we already have a bunch of Canadian igloo people in the house. I know you guys have to live in igloos because of the price of housing over there, man. Canada's cooked. They're in trouble. I mean, Canada has all the resources we have, but they just won't use them because of the environmentalist. Cleveland, Illinois, that really means you're not in Chicago. you're not. Yeah, if someone's from Illinois, they'll let you know. But if they're from Chicago, you'll never know. They'll never say Illinois. Denmark. Okay, we have Denmarkians in the chat. Look, any Danish person would have hated me when, sorry, not Danish, Denmarkians. The Denmarkians would have hated me when Trump was like obsessed with being an imperialist and he wanted Greenland, the Panama Canal. Well, we should have the Panama Canal back. That's just common sense. When he wanted Canada, like he just wanted the whole map. Oh man, you guys would have hated me because the way I loved that time, I was the breaking news guy on X on those things. But man, I triggered Danish people. I had I have a video on TikTok about that, and there's so many Danish people that hate my guts because I said it. I said we need Denmark or we need Greenland. Or we might need Denmark. Denmark would be the 51st state, or maybe 55th after Trump adds Canada. We might. The United Kingdom could be a state, but we have to ban the Sharia stuff. Yeah, but we don't really want like Essex and Birmingham. We don't want Liverpool. We don't want those areas. We'll take London without all the Pakistanis or Bangladeshis. We'll just take the London with, the traditional Anglo-Saxon English people. That's what we want. Yeah. The Japanese, the Nigerians, they can come too. But we don't want Northern Ireland. We can have normal Ireland though. Scotland's fine, but I don't want Wales. Weird name. We don't want Wales. We're not really enthused by Wales. While we're at it, we should just do a regime change in Cuba. What are we waiting for, Mr. President? Okay. Minnesota, hey, Ilhan Omar, bad news for her. I was going to do a video on it, but I got too lazy. President Trump issued an order terminating temporary protection status for hundreds of Somalis in Minnesota, hundreds of them, and they are now eligible for deportation. Hellman, do your worst. Send them over there. The Somalis, man, they're ripping apart Minneapolis. They are ripping it apart. The scams, the COVID fraud that they did with the money, applying for all kinds of grants and loans, and just ripping apart the government. You're in Israel. Your name literally says Texican, of course. Which part of Israel? Which district of Tel Aviv has Texas in it? Mississippi, Arizona. My parents lived in Winston Salem. Okay. Bakersfield. Okay, awesome. Australia. Oh man, Australia. Okay. San Diego. Awesome. Good to see everybody, man. Walls is, of course, helping that fraud. Yeah, he is. 12 people's already arrested. North Carolina. Okay, that's where Winston-Salem is. Alabama. Odessa, Texas. No, I shouldn't do this. Turlock, California. Hey, who was coming up with these names, man? They just ran out of names. They ran out of things to call. They just looked at the British cities, and they eventually ran out of new everything. New York, New England. Actually, there are a lot of places named after British towns. Any SCOTUS tariff reports? The Supreme Court has not made that decision yet. I'm kind of nervous about it, but if they make the dumb decision that I think they'll make, then Trump can just use a different set of laws to impose his tariffs. But I really need him to. I need them to keep those tariffs because the tariffs are a policy to protect American industry and rebuild manufacturing. We need those. Flint, Michigan. Man, hey, peace. Shout out to the um, Flint, Michigan people. Ah, man. I was thinking of jokes about water, but I know you guys don't have any. New Brunswick, is that in Canada? That's in Canada, right? Doug is from Turlock. Doug Tenaple. Really? No, there's no way. No, he's from Norwalk. Yeah, unless that's like close by. Yeah, Doug Tenaple is from California. Toledo, Ohio. Free Tina Peters. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen the video I made, my state is destroying Tina Peters' life. She's 70 years old and she's getting treated like a career criminal. You know, I watched that judge's remarks before he sentenced her, and he said, "Oh, Tina, I would see you differently if you had like a different background, if you had a tough upbringing, but you're privileged because you've never committed any crimes, so you should know better." And it's like, what? So people from bad backgrounds shouldn't know better? Like, that's a liberal just judge for you. She thinks Tina Peters being raised in a normal household and having a non-criminal life is somehow bad and goes against her when sentencing, when weighing how she should be sentenced. So that judge is a disgrace. He's a disgrace to the Constitution. He said that about Tina. You're a disgrace to the No, you're a disgrace to the Constitution, you disgusting weasel. Yeah, Doug's in Tennessee now. Doug's in Tennessee. Wichita, Kansas. Okay. We have Florida people in the house. Isn't it like 12 a.m. for you guys? What are you doing here? Go to sleep. Doesn't DeSantis have to like do something for you? How did George Santos get released before Tina? Well, he was in federal prison, so her case is a state case. Only the governor has the jurisdiction to pardon her. But what Trump's trying to do, or Ed Martin and the other people in the administration, is get her moved to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Then they'll just free her or put her into witness protection. I think they should. Investigations like this help because they vindicate her case. They vindicate her preserving those records. Massachusetts here, okay. Home of John Adams. She's a federal witness. I think so. I think they need to do something along those lines. Have the federal government open an investigation and say Tina Peters is a witness to elections. Whatever that means, just say it. And that brings her to the federal government's jurisdiction. They can protect her. St. Louis, Missouri? Okay. Great. All right. Goodbye. Oh, man. Can we sell California back to Mexico? No. I like California. They have good weather and everything. We can't give it back to the Mexicans. The cartels are just going to run it.